before I talk about what I want to talk about, I just want to dispel a myth that I'm sure most of you are aware that it's a myth, but some of you might not be, and that is the idea somehow that has crept into Muslim culture that boys are better than girls, or actually more preferable. And I think part of the problems that we have in our Muslim communities have to do with cultural problems, and I would say that they're universalized. They just manifest differently according to different cultures. The United States is also a country that suffers from that same problem in its view and attitudes towards women. And in fact, Dr. Abdul Hakim Winter wrote a paper that is really worth reading called Boys Will Be Boys. And in that paper he describes the fact that it's actually Islam that prevents this very insidious idea from taking over. Because if you look outwardly at the situation that we have, the vast majority of men have certain qualities that are superior to the vast majority of women in the outward. And most of them have to do with basic physical qualities. And in fact, the physiology of women's design it's not designed for rough sports. And one of the major problems that's occurring in America, because young girls are beginning to play contact sports and rough sports, is the increase in the number of sports-related injuries that actually relate to physical structures, the difference between the knees of men and the knees of women, the difference between the hips. Female hips are very different. The shoulder blades. If you look at the basic bone structure of a woman and you look at the basic bone structure of men, they are different. So there's a physical difference. Now, obviously, there are certain women that are very strong, and then there are certain men that are very weak. And so it's something that is more of a bell curve type of understanding. But one of the things that Dr. Winter points out in that paper is that when you have a society that begins to create a culture of this outward overachievement, that basically, he says, that it is the women who will eventually suffer greatly because they are compelled to compete with men in areas that there was never meant to be any competition. And this is why there's this attempt now to reach this threshold where females can actually compete in male sports categories. So there's this idea of finally getting a woman who can actually make it to pro basketball in the men's league. Now, as of now, it was a great historical event when this poor woman dunked a basketball in a basketball game recently. It was considered like this immense event that she was able to do this dunk that occurs every single day all over the country by men playing basketball. Is this what we want our women to be doing and competing in? And what Islam does is it creates a competition not in the outward but in the inward. And in that, it is the men who are disadvantaged, which is really interesting. So the opposite happens. If you look in a sports track, you have, if you watch an Olympic sport or even in high school, you have the people in the outward lap are given a head start because the people in the inward lap have a shorter run on that first lap. By the second lap, because they can all move into the inward lap, it will equal out. But they put the runner who's in that outward lap, they give him a head start because in the end it's going to equal out. And the same is true, you see, for the inward spirituality. Men are given this head start so that it equals out. And that's why men are given things that they're to do spiritually, like the qawama. You see, men are there to maintain women. That is that little head start that they get. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that in the Quran, that giving men the infaq was something that He gave a fadl there. A fadl is an excess because men need that in a relationship in which the woman is raising children. A woman is having childbirth. A woman has a jihad, according to the hadith which is sahih, in her house that is ongoing, and many men will never get the opportunity to actually be involved in a jihad, which is one of the highest maqams in Islam. And so Allah gives men a head start spiritually, because when they reach on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, it's basically equaled out in a lot of things. One of the other things is, one of the greatest qualities of the human heart is riqqa, is a type of brittleness. And the Prophet ﷺ praised the Yemenis because he said, araqu quluban, that they are more brittle-hearted than other people. In other words, they wept easier, and that was better for them in terms of their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because one of the descriptions that Allah gives about people that love Allah is that they weep easily. Now, spiritually, women have a total advantage over men in that area, because most men have a very difficult time weeping. And the Prophet ﷺ actually said, if you can't do it, then at least fake it. You see, but women don't need to fake it. They can actually weep very easily, and when they take a spiritual path, it's something that comes completely natural to them to actually have that ability to weep, because the heart has this softness, this rahmah.
محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم. محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين